a body left behind by the land. She lay where the mesas fractured into stone and emptiness, as though the earth itself had grown tired of holding her. Her body was stretched thin by hunger, skin drawn tight over bone, every breath shallow and measured, as if even air were something to be rationed. Her lips were split and pale, her eyes dulled by days of sun and thirst, no longer searching the horizon, only enduring it. The land around her offered no comfort. It never had. The desert stood vast and unblinking, its colors bleached by centuries of endurance, sand the shade of old parchment, rock burned white by relentless light. Wind moved through the mesas like a quiet verdict, lifting dust in slow, indifferent spirals. She had fallen here not with drama, but with resignation. A body easing itself down where strength finally failed, trusting the land to decide whether she would rise again or be taken whole. There were no footprints nearby. No signs of rescue or pursuit. Only silence pressing in from every direction, vast enough to swallow even memory. In that stillness, she hovered at the narrow edge between living and becoming another unmarked story the desert would keep to itself. The man who knows when to turn away, and doesn't. He noticed her because she did not belong. In a land where stone and shadow repeated themselves without end, the human form carried a different weight. It interrupted the pattern. Even at a distance, he could sense the wrongness of it, something fragile laid bare where only endurance survived. He reined in his horse and remained still, letting the moment decide whether it would pass or remain. Years alone had taught him the wisdom of distance. Out here, survival was measured not by courage, but by restraint. You did not touch what could pull you back into the tangled reckonings of men, tribal laws older than the fence lines, blood promises that did not fade with time, grief that sharpened itself when stirred. He knew what she was the moment he drew closer. A tribe woman. Starved. Abandoned or lost, both equally dangerous truths. The cost of stopping unfolded in his mind with practiced clarity. Questions he did not wish to answer. Eyes that would one day come searching. The careful solitude he had built, splintered by a single choice. The West had schooled him well. It taught that mercy could be fatal, that silence was often the only shield a man was given. Yet something beneath that hard-earned knowledge stirred, older than fear, older than caution. A promise once made in a different life, whispered over fresh graves beneath a sky that had offered no explanation. He thought of the last time he had turned away. The horse shifted beneath him, impatient, sensing the pause. Dust settled. The wind waited. Then he dismounted. The decision was not loud. It did not announce itself as heroism. It moved through him like a fault line finally giving way, quiet, irreversible. Whatever followed, he would carry it. Crossing the threshold. When he reached her, the first thing he felt was how little there was left to lift. Her body yielded easily into his arms, light in a way that carried no grace, only warning. It was the weight of something already half surrendered. He steadied himself, mindful not to jostle what remained of her strength, and laid her carefully across the saddle. The horse shifted, uneasy, then settled. Even the animal seemed to understand that this burden was not cargo, but consequence. They moved slowly through the mesas, hooves muffled by dust, the land watching without comment. The sun dipped lower, softening its glare, casting long shadows that stretched like unanswered questions across the trail. His homestead emerged from the rise as it always did, unannounced, weather-worn, more shelter than home. Wood bleached gray by years of heat, windows clouded with dust, a place built not to welcome, but to endure. Inside, the air held the scent of smoke and solitude. He laid her near the fire, adjusting her position with care that asked nothing in return. No words passed his lips. None were needed. He stepped back, giving the space between them the respect of a boundary. This was the first time they shared a roof. Uneasy. Silent. Sacred. The horse shifted, uneasy, then settled. Even the animal seemed to understand that this burden was not cargo, but consequence. They moved slowly through the mesas, hooves muffled by dust, the land watching without comment. The sun dipped lower, softening its glare, casting long shadows that stretched like unanswered questions across the trail. His homestead emerged from the rise as it always did, unannounced, weather-worn, more shelter than home. Wood bleached gray by years of heat, windows clouded with dust, a place built not to welcome, but to endure. Inside, the air held the scent of smoke and solitude. He laid her near the fire, adjusting her position with care that asked nothing in return. No words passed his lips. None were needed. He stepped back, giving the space between them the respect of a boundary. This was the first time they shared a roof. Uneasy. Silent. Sacred. Hands that do not take. She woke with fear already sharpened. Her eyes tracked him as one tracks a predator, measuring distance, weighing escape. He noticed, and kept his hands visible. Water was set within reach. Food left nearby. Then he stepped away. No questions followed. No words pressed against her silence. Days passed marked only by light sliding across the floor. He cleaned wounds gently, never lingering. Each gesture ended before it could become a claim. Trust did not arrive as belief. It arrived as the simple knowledge that nothing was taken. Memory without language. At dusk, she ground herbs beside the fire, her movements slow but steady. A low song slipped from her lips, soft, unadorned, older than the walls around them. It carried no words meant for him, yet it filled the space all the same. His eyes were drawn to the small piece of bone at her throat, etched with a careful mark. A sign of belonging. Of promise. She noticed his glance. Their eyes met briefly, then turned away. Nothing was spoken. The past remained between them, present without explanation. The land remembers. Peace shifted before it broke. He found the tracks near the water, pressed deep, deliberate, made by men who knew where they were going. Later, a thin line of smoke rose on the far horizon, faint but certain. He did not speak of it at first. He only watched the land, the way a man watches an old wound before it opens. Out here, nothing stayed buried. The desert remembered every crossing, every debt. And it was remembering them now, shared ruin at dusk. Firelight trembled across their faces, half-shadowed, half-lit. She spoke first, voice low, each word measured like a step across stone. A famine march. Collapsing before reaching her people. A promise to a chieftain, made without her consent, sealing peace she would never live to see. He answered with his own loss, voice heavy with memory, wife and children taken in one night of violence, justice buried with them. Pain met pain, not to compete, but to recognize, to bear witness. For a moment, the world shrank to the circle of firelight, and two shattered lives found each other in the quiet. From shelter to choice. When strength returned, so did her resolve. She would not remain the silent, passive guest. She gathered wood, cooked, and repaired what had been broken. I will not be carried again, she said, voice steady. It was not defiance, it was declaration. This place was no longer only refuge. It became shared ground, fragile yet chosen, where survival was mutual and trust earned with every gesture. The men who come with certainty. At dawn, they appeared, painted, armed, resolute. The warriors stopped at the edge of the homestead, silent but certain, each step and stance a claim. To them, a sacred promise had been broken. WMP felt the weight of their intent before words could form. The desert itself seemed to tighten around the house, holding its breath. Peace, he knew, was no longer a choice. It was a moment borrowed, soon to be tested, stillness before blood. He stepped forward, unarmed, boots sinking into dust that smelled of heat and memory. "I did not steal her," he said quietly, voice carrying across the silent distance. "Nor do I claim her. What I offer is choice. A woman's will is not theft, it is truth." The warriors paused, fingers tightening on weapons, then easing. The desert itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what might come. Violence hovered, heavy and near. Yet restraint, rare, costly, deliberate, spoke louder than any threat. She steps forward. She did not remain behind him. Dust rose around her boots as she stepped into the open, side by side with the man who had given her sanctuary. "I chose to live," she said. "I chose where my breath will remain." Her voice was steady, unwavering. If blood was demanded, it would be hers as well. The warriors saw not a stolen bride, but a woman already claimed by another fate, shaped by will, courage, and survival. The moment shifted, quiet as sand settling after a wind that had passed. What endures after the dust settles? Months passed. The homestead softened at its edges. Green pushed stubbornly through dry soil. The wind carried less threat, more memory. They worked side by side, words few, understanding deep. In a land built on taking, they had chosen restraint. They had chosen mercy. And the desert, ancient witness to all things, carried their story forward in silence, as it had carried countless others before.